And defense is always going to be ahead of the offense this early in camp. Just natural. You have a defense in Ejiro Evero that was here last year. What is going on, Panthers Nation? Carolina Dad here, your host of the Growls One Roar podcast. Hope y'all are doing well, doing fantastic. Hey, a lot of y'all have been sharing awesome clips, awesome highlights from a lot that's going on in training camp, and I'm jealous. Jealous that I can't be there and take it in and see what y'all are seeing. Some of y'all are also VIPs, and I don't know how you became a VIP, but hats off to you. I am not a VIP. Folks, hey, training camp, day 4 in the books, padded practice happening today. I'm saying today, I'm recording this on the 29th. The first padded practice is going to be on the 30th. If you're listening to this on the 30th, padded practice is here. This is where boys become men in this situation and get to learn a little bit more about the team. Now, 4 days of practices are in the books. I did a day 1 recap, had a busy weekend, so I did not get around to like a day 2, got to get the cat away, a day 3, a day 4 recap. So I thought, hey, you know what? Let's get on here. Let's get you up to speed with everything that I've seen. It's not going to be perfect, but I think maybe it'll set the tone. And hey, I'm going to be back full steam ahead in the studio, at least we'll call it the studio, coming up this weekend with a lot more content, hoping to make it down to training camp on Saturday so that we can at least get 1 day in this year. See it firsthand. Overall, sounds like training camp itself has been going well. Now we'll talk about some injuries that just happened, some news, some very unfortunate news that we just got today. Talk about a few roster transactions and the state of Dave Canales. I guess we can kick it off. Let's talk about the roster. It's important to know who's here, who's not here. And we can pull this up. So importantly, we had a few injury updates coming along. Now, taking a step back, remember Jonathan Brooks was placed on the active non-football injury list. That's because his football occurred before he was in the NFL. Football injury occurred. Wonum, Yash, Amari Barno, and Jalen Coker are on the active, physically unable to perform list, the PUP list. That was on the 19th. On the 20th, you had Shaw Smith-Wade and Cam Sims on the active PUP list. On the 23rd, Jalen Coker and Shaw Smith-Wade were activated, which is good news, which, hey, they're out there practicing, and I already saw Jalen Coker making some plays in the highlights that I saw. They also signed wide receiver Devin Tompkins, which we'll talk about in a little bit. He has ties to Dave Canales. Again, he's bringing in people that he knows, the system that he can run, and that's why I think the back end of that wide receiver room is really going to hinge on some of the guys that are familiar with the system. And maybe it's a David Moore, maybe it's a Devin Tompkins. They did waive defensive tackle Popo Omave. Unfortunately, he got hurt in practice, so he ends up getting waived. And then following that, we heard, hey, edge position, outside linebacker needs some help, right? He needs a lot of help. When you talk about injuries with Barno and Wonum, now we had tryouts, including Marquise Haynes, remember? Former Panther, and a few other guys that came in. Out of this, let's talk about, because there's a slew of transactions. They signed outside linebacker Kimoko Toure, hope I say that right. Tight end Felipe Franks, that's right. The same tight end that was a quarterback at Florida is now a tight end. Tight end Felipe Franks, cornerback, hey, you wanted a cornerback, Keandre Thomas, and wide receiver Devin Carter. Lots and lots of receivers flow through this place. They placed wide receiver Cam Sims on the reserve PUP list, waived safety Clayton Isbell, offensive tackle Christian Duffy, and wide receiver Sam Pinkney. A few of those guys that are on that list that I talk about there Isbell, Duffy, and Sam Pinckney actually all undrafted free agents, so I don't think it comes, as a bit of surprise. Let's talk about Dave Canales and what we've heard. I went through, tried to summarize all four of his pressers as best I can. I guess before I talk about Dave Canales, again, we've also heard, let's get this pulled up here. I talked about J.C. Horn and Xavier Leggett the first day. They were in the books. We heard from Deontay Johnson. He's going to be a big focal point of this offense. And you heard that directly from Dave Canales. Bryce Young, and then Austin Corbett, Derek Brown, today, Jonathan Mingo, and Dane Jackson. And we again have heard from Dave Canales every single day after every practice. So here we go. Going back to day one, summarizing his presser, he was emphasizing eagerness to return to football. Hey, why wouldn't we? Getting that started early on in camp, the chemistry that, hey, we all want to see with Bryce Young and Deontay Johnson, just building that connection, communication. I even saw people who were at camp talking about their communication with each other on the sidelines as they kind of build that rapport. You also talk about, or what else did he pull up here? Again, emphasizing the rotation of the running backs in the running game. And this continues to come up, having a strong identity that's built off of being able to run the ball and being able to stop the run. And teams in November and December, January that are able to do that are going to find success. So I think that'll continue to be a recurring theme. And with the state of where the running backs are right now, Chuba Hubbard 1, Miles 2, Raheem probably 3, and Jonathan Brooks hoping to get healthy. I'd love to see a good dose, especially when you invested so much on the offensive line coming into this season. You'd really want to see them, again, elevate. Hey, speaking of mentors and mentorship, I don't think it comes as a bit of surprise that Dave Canales spent some time with Pete Carroll in the offseason getting prepared for his first training camp, and legendary coach Tony Dungy. You can actually go back and there's an interview with Tony Dungy and Dave Canales way back, I think detailing Dave Canales' book. You can look at that clip up on YouTube. And hey, just like every other coach right now, talking about the competition amongst each other, competing for themselves, and hey, having practice here in Charlotte. He wasn't here for Wofford, but taking advantage of that. We move into day 2, or I guess the second practice. I think a lot of things focused around tempo and energy. And if you had a chance to listen to the interview that I did with Cassidy Hill, I think one thing we've learned about Dave Canales is his attention to detail. And I think that's followed him everywhere he's gone and how he's gotten to this point. There's a high level attention to detail of his install, his plan for Bryce Young, his plan for the offense. And I think they're in the very early stages of building out those development. I think there's a few more phases, up to 8 more installs to go. I can't remember where that tidbit dropped, but quite a bit more. Defense. First 2 days of camp, I think it was safe to say the defense won the day. And that was from a lot of what I saw in some of the drills, the 1-on-1s, the 7-on-7s, the team drills, and that's a good sign. And defense is always going to be ahead of the offense this early in camp. Just natural. You have a defense in Ejiro Evero that was here last year. You bring back a lot of same guys or guys that knew his scheme, and it's going to make sense that they're going to be a little bit faster and ahead of the offense at this stage. But let's talk about the offense coming alive here in a little bit. One of the fun matchups that I've seen is Xavier Leggett, J.C. Horn. There was a clip today of Xavier, and I don't know who he was going against, but his route running really coming alive. I think that's one thing that people feared, was like, what is this route running going to look like? And in general, we look at this team, this offense. The offense is going to hinge on protecting Bryce Young with that protection, being able to make some some more accurate throws, get the ball out to receivers and playmakers that can do a little bit more with the ball. And I think we are positioned to do that. But a lot of that also centers around the receivers on this team taking a step forward. And one of those that likely is going to take a step forward, at least has so far, is Jonathan Mingo. And Mingo, if he can have a big breakout year in year 2, paired along with Xavier, paired along with Deontay Johnson, I mean, you are talking about, and that's not even talking about Adam. That alone is going to set Bryce up for a successful season, and especially throwing in again the running game that goes with that. We are in the early phases again right now, just strength conditioning. I even heard some of the guys that I know that went to camp that talked to some of the players after, and I think it was Amir Smith-Marset. They said they talked to, and he just was like burnt out because they are moving Amir Smith-Marset all over the place in this offense. So I do think it sounds like there's a good position for him to be in, or a good spot on this team moving forward. I haven't had time to sit down and do my 53-man roster prediction. I will do that, I guess, this weekend so we can get that out for you. You'll have an early read on what I think of where we're going to sit. Now we'll move on. Here's another interesting piece that I've heard throughout camp. It's early, but Jamie Robinson, again drafted as a safety, is getting a lot of looks at the nickel position with Troy Hill, Shaw Smith-Wade, and I think that makes tons of sense considering Troy Hill's age and the versatility of Jamie. Like maybe Jamie's a little bit smaller at the safety position, and our safety room is honestly full as it can get. So I think being able to move him down, playing in the nickel, will do wonders. And Shaw Smith-Wade again coming up under the wings and learning as well. So I think that's another developing piece. And when we talk about standout performances and ask, Dave Canales has asked about like who's stepping up, and this is outside of, Deontay Johnson, I think is living up to the hype, regardless of what you're seeing online with potentially, him dropping passes or a dropped pass. That's the thing, man. I will tell you whatever you see on these clips, these highlights, these one bits and pieces, like that's not the full story. So I wouldn't read into it one way or the other, like heavily into this direction or that direction. But Mingo has been talked about a lot, and I think a lot of folks I've heard that have been there are seeing it. Terrace Marshall Jr., how many times have we heard that? Terrace, that's another, like on the back end, if you have Terrace and Amir that are also developed or developing, and maybe this is their breakout year 2, and I'm not going to hold my breath, but it does make you feel a little bit better about the situation. David Moore on ESPN Wilmington past week, I said David Moore was a sleeper for the roster. I also said Dawood Davis. Unfortunately, Dawood Davis sounds like he has a thigh injury. I hope it's nothing serious and he's able to come back and compete for a roster spot. And then outside of J.C. Horn, Dane Jackson stepping up, making some plays, Deshaun Jameson, DiCaprio Bootle, Troy Hill, it sounds like the cornerback room is going to be okay. And I think, that was kind of my impression coming into this. I was like, I'm going to feel pretty confident in the coaching staff that they are going to be able to pull this thing out. They're going to be able to, hey, get a little bit more out of these guys. Now, speaking of Devin Tompkins, did I say that right? Make sure I got Devin's name in my notes. Yeah, Devin Tompkins. So Canales did address that signing as well. Again, it has to do with knowing him and his time in Tampa. He can also be a contributor as a kick returner. So I think that's another reason, a wrinkle into why he was signed. We continue to hear about Bryce Young's development, which I think is a good thing to see him in year 2. I think he had his first interception at camp at Back Together on Saturday. That was the only one so far. And I don't know who posted a clip or what. Here's the thing about everyone that posts clips, and it's fine. It's what people do at this point of the year. The access to that stuff, like there's a reason that Canales and the Panthers don't want that stuff filmed and out there because it gets out. And there's coaches and teams and scouts watching that stuff or downloading it, and they want to get every edge that they can. Right? What are they doing here? What are they doing there? How can we analyze this? And I say that even after watching Kansas City Chiefs clip today, where there's like a triple, quadruple pass or something that probably wouldn't run in the season. But the person, I don't know who it was, sorry, I can't remember, posted that the Panthers reached out to them to take down some of their videos that they had posted so that they're not exposed. I remember Matt Rule. That was my first training camp. So, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it is, I can't keep up. And I tried to record at that time, was completely shut down. They would come over to you if they saw you. Sir, you can't do that. We're going to ask you to leave if you continue. With Frank, it was completely different. With Frank Wright, everybody had their phones out, pictures, videos, they didn't care. Maybe that was the sign. This year, it seems like maybe it's in the middle. I don't know. I haven't been in person to hear if they're telling you to take your phones down, but I have seen a lot of clips coming out of camp. Harder to restrict it and back together because there's a huge bowl and you're in the stadium. So being able to monitor that versus like a confined space in camp would make sense. But Bryce Young's development seems to be, I don't think we're hearing anything that scares us or anything that makes you say, oh man, he's really going to take that next step forward. I think we'll know more once we get into joint practice, even though it's one, and the preseason, really seeing like how much better is this offense going to be. But positive news for him and his development as he comes along in this offense. Yeah, we have padded practice kicking off tomorrow. Now, the other thing, you may wonder, why did we sign a tight end? Jordan Matthews, his name's been coming up a lot in a positive way. Ian Thomas. Tommy Tremble is currently injured. We don't know exactly what. It's a light injury, but he's been taking precautions right now. I hope that just means, hey, we know he hurt, I think it was his hamstring, and we're just going to ease him back into things and have him ready for week one, which would be the goal. I hope we don't have a setback here with Tommy coming into this year. A little bit from Jatavian Sanders, from what I could hear, but nothing like, hey, he's out there, making splash plays. And I think Xavier has come along a bit. Remember, he was very critical of himself day one. And then you go back, look over these last few days, it sounds like he's getting much more involved in the offense, being able to make plays. And like I said, I saw some of the highlights and one-on-ones and different drills that he's doing now. And I think he is everything we thought he would be and more in this offense. So lots of good news. Now, here we go. We've got today's update. Let's see. Yeah, the weather has been honestly, I know it's wet. It's been fantastic. Like for us moving up, or for them to move up into Charlotte compared to Wofford in the heat. And again, if they had the indoor facility, it'd be A++ this year. A lot of overcast, a lot of rain. I'm sure it is going to heat up, and I'm sure if we end up getting to go Saturday, it'll be blazing hot. But at least for now, hey, you get to adapt. There was also an emphasis on getting the ball out, having turnovers. I think we saw a few clips of that happening. I think it was in the 7-on-7 drill where Johnson fumbled. But yeah, back together practice. People talked about the attendance. It was the lower bowl. It was different than Fan Fest. And I also think just like year over year, like you go 2-15. Last year you had the number one pick. There was a lot more hype. I think people are just reserved right now. And it's also early in the morning on a Saturday. I think if it would have been at night or the evening, probably a potential for better turnout. But we also know the practice at FanFest at Clemson is going to be a scrimmage. So if you are going or can make the trip, sounds like you should get yourself a pretty good practice, being able to see a live scrimmage there. And I think tomorrow they'll probably start since they're going to full pads. I mentioned Dawood Davis. Here we go. Sadly, unfortunate news. Sam Franklin broke his foot. No timetable on his return, but Canales is like, it's difficult to you can't replace Sam Franklin, and I agree with that. He's a special teams extraordinaire. We saw him with the pick sticks last year with Kirk Cousins when he was on the Vikings, and I said, man, I was really looking forward to Sam doing that again. I am still looking forward to it. I hope Sam has a quick recovery. I don't know how long it takes to recover, breaking your foot, fracture, whatever happened, what the rehabilitation process looks like. But hopefully we do get him back. I don't think they've ruled out that he won't be available. I think with that move does maybe open up the possibility that Jamie Robinson's retained, as you have an additional spot, and the fact that he's moving down to nickel. That one hurts, man. Really like Sam Franklin, but again, it does give, and Coach Canales said, gives other guys an opportunity to step up. More talk about strong running game, and again, it's crucial for late season success. Emphasize the importance of toughness and running the ball to unify the team's offense, defense, special teams later in the year. Progress of several players, including the wide receiver group, they're all taking steps forward. Bryce Young and Chuba Hubbard noted improvements in Young's decision-making and leadership that emphasize the importance of competition. That's all the notes that I had. Now, the only other thing I'll call out that I feel is kind of noteworthy is listening to Austin Corbett talk yesterday. There's a lot of this, one, this is not his position. He acknowledged that. He said, this is a business. I'm here to learn. This is what I have to do. It's my job. So, hey, he understands the situation. He also talked about injuries, and there's this idea that he's had injuries, season-ending injuries. But if you go back, and it's very true, 2 years ago, the season-ending injury happened in the last game of the year. So that's where he tore his ACL and was out. Then he comes back this past year, has the MCL, which is soft tissue. It is a much less severe injury. And I think it was just the nature of the team why he got shut down. So I do think coming into this year, sure, it's okay to out loud question if he's going to be okay. But I think, hey, it's a businessman. And if you did not have a chance to listen to the podcast or the episode with Cassidy, I did ask about Andrew Rame, who is the undrafted free agent center out of Oklahoma. It sounds like he's not making much noise, which means Brady Christensen probably back up. Nash Jensen, someone posted today, is also getting some snaps there. So a lot happening. Man, folks, what a recap for only 4 days of practice, and I'd already did like a day one recap. Practice is moving right along. I will continue to produce. And hey, folks, if you are listening to the show, hey, appreciate you. Please hit subscribe. Subscribe, follow, all that fun stuff. And I do truly appreciate the support that y'all have for this show and helping it grow. But until next time, y'all have a good one.